Good day, friends. In today's video, I'll explain how it is possible to voluntarily get India, China, and Pakistan in a common security architecture. Now, I was recently invited to participate in the 12th Beijing Shangshan Forum in China, where on September 18th, in the session on Asia Pacific Security Cooperation, I addressed one of the hotspots there in that region. And I spoke on India, China, and Pakistan. Now, what I'll do in this video is there are a bit few highlights from my talk, as well as in the last 10 days, certain updates have happened. So I'll combine the two and present my case to the viewers. Now, let me start with stepping back and looking at the big picture, and that is that Americans today accept that there are three great powers: America, China, and Russia. However, all Americans without exception, they believe that in this century America is in a competition with China. Now, this is their thinking. This is the thinking of global north. But there's another thinking also. And the other thinking is that if it is to be called a competition, America is not in competition with China. America is in competition with global south nations, which are backed by a new global governance system supported by two great powers, China and Russia, which both bring huge strengths on the table. So when we look at this competition, it is actually humongous. So as I said, if it is to be called a competition, there is no way that in my assessment America can win this competition. But that is not the point. The point is that certainly today in the world, there are two entirely different thinkings or two entirely different mindsets, and we as Indians need to understand that if we are to navigate India into the new world order properly, in a way that helps our poor people. So we know that the Cold War was won by America, and it was won based on balance of power politics, where because of humongous military power of America, it was all about absolute security. It was a zero-sum game that my security can be at the cost of your security. This is the thinking of the Cold War. Then we had the unipolar world, which started in 1991 and lasted till 2012, when President Obama ordered the pivot to Asia. Now there was no need for balance of power politics because there was only one global hegemon, superpower America. So within the rules that the Americans created and the institutions that the Americans created, they allowed globalization of trade till the world changed now, and it has become a multipolar world. But that American thinking still remains, which is why the senior officials of the Trump administration openly tell India publicly that you stop buying oil from Russia, stop buying weapons from Russia, stop doing dealings with Iran. So this is that mindset that you are either with us or you are with the other side, the enemy. Now, as I said, there is a new thinking also that has come up, of which the Americans and unfortunately the Indians are unaware of. And that happened when Xi Jinping became president of China, and he did his first foreign visit to Russia, and that was in March of 2013. This is when Xi Jinping met up with President Putin. The two leaders discussed their views and their visions for a new world order. They were totally aligned. And on the same visit, President Xi Jinping, he addressed the Moscow State Institute of International Relations, where he gave out two important concepts that need to be understood. He spoke about new type of international relations. Why? Because these had to be based on geoeconomics and not on geopolitics, which is what the American thinking is about. And when we talk of economics, we are talking of trade. And in trade, it is important that all the countries, big or small, they should have the strategic autonomy to decide for themselves which country they want to trade with and which country they do not want to trade with. In other words, there should be equality of nations, there should be mutual respect. And as we know, under the United Nations, there are 193 nations, big and small. So, in this thinking of the multipolar world, there are actually 193 poles. This is the thinking of this new global governance system, which is why the global south nations, 80% of the world, is gravitating towards this. They want trade, they want development, they want prosperity and progress. Now, the other thing that Xi Jinping said at the Moscow Institute was he spoke about community of shared future of mankind. Now this has two components. One is national rejuvenation of the Chinese people, and the second is community of shared future of mankind. They both support one another, both are dependent on one another. Because when we talk of national rejuvenation of the Chinese people, it is about building China's economy, its technology power, and its deterrence. And we know that China today is the number one manufacturing nation in the world, and China is focusing on innovations. And China is focusing on industrial supply chains and value supply chains to be part of the entire stacks of the value supply chain. And China is focusing on building industrial capacities to support both the supply chains. So China is doing this, and alongside this, it is looking at global south, which is what this community of shared future of mankind is about. Taking this Belt and Road initiative of China, I won't dwell on that. But the long and short is that of 193 countries in the world today, 150 are on board the Belt and Road initiative of China. Now, therefore, in the last one decade, as part of this second concept of shared future, the Chinese have built trade, connectivity, development. They've done a lot in African continent, in Latin America and Caribbeans, Southeast Asian nations, Middle East, and the Eurasian as a whole. So this is all that they have been able to do. Now, as far as India and Pakistan are concerned, they both inherit a colonial mindset, which really aligns with the Americans and the global north. So they are happy with that, except that Pakistan now has changed a bit. How? I'll just come to that in a while. But as far as India is concerned, I have not heard a single Indian analyst talk about another thinking in the world today. They only talk of zero-sum game. Which is why recently I heard the External Affairs Minister Jaishankar speak that today India is in a position to do trade with Europe, which is a pole. So in Jaishankar's thinking, in the multipolar world, there are certain poles or certain power centers or certain blocks. He does not believe that all the 193 countries can be poles by themselves. So it's a different thinking. Now, as far as Pakistan is concerned, Pakistan has reformed a bit. And that has happened primarily because of China. Pakistan joined the CPEC in 2015, and things changed for Pakistan in 2019 when India removed 370 from Jammu and Kashmir. Now this is the time the Pakistan political and military leadership, they went to China to discuss the matter with them. And there Chinese President Xi Jinping told the military leadership of Pakistan, focus on two things. Focus on development and progress, connectivity, and focus on deterrence. And they did both, which is why in April 2022, Pakistan came up with its first national security policy where the focus is on development, it's on connectivity, it's on the human factor. So this is about Pakistan. Now, when we are talking of this trade and development, another important issue fundamental to this is peace. But peace cannot be the focus. Peace must be there, and so that it is possible to do development. So therefore, the concept in this new global governance system of peace is not absolute security but indivisible security. It is about common security, it's about relative security, and this was explained very well recently on the sidelines of the United Nations by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, where he said in the context of Ukraine that Ukraine's security cannot be at the cost of Russian security. He was talking of relative security. He was talking about a concept of security which has been given out by President Putin in 2024, and that is called Eurasian Security Architecture. Now, I won't dwell on this here, but the point to make is that a similar thing was given out in 2022 by President Xi Jinping in what he said Global Security Initiative. Now, once we understand this background, now we need to talk about the SCO summit held in September 1st in China. This was a big event. This was the biggest SCO so far in terms of participation. Now, before I talk about what happened here, and a lot of important things happened here, what needs to be understood is that in the new global governance system that I am talking about, there are two institutions which have been created to take on or to neutralize or to diffuse the two strengths of America. One is the SCO. SCO, through its new concept of indivisible security, is meant to take on the American military power, where things are about absolute security, because of which America today has close to 800 military bases around the globe. So that is SCO. The focus is on indivisible security. And the other one is BRICS, where the challenge is how to take on the American dollar supremacy and the supremacy of dollar payment system. And here things are being done. What we call de-dollarization, what is being called, is not really a replacement of dollar immediately, but a displacement of dollar and looking at new payment systems. With this as the backdrop, the SCO summit in China on September 1st came out with three big announcements. The first, of course, was President Xi Jinping giving his new concept of global governance initiative. Now, this is really what he said here is what this whole new global security system that I have been talking about is all about. But I won't go in the details of this except to say that this is a very important initiative given by Xi Jinping. And the other thing that happened here was it was decided that the SCO should have a development bank of its own, just like BRICS has a development bank of its own called the New Development Bank. And the third thing was a 10-year development plan was announced that this will be made. Now, this is the point. If both these institutions, SCO and BRICS, they are to have their own development banks and they are to follow a common development path, a strategy for the next 10 years, then why should there be two institutions? Why not merge the two? And this is what I said in my talk in China. I said perhaps there is a need to merge the two, and when we merge the two, then we see that both these individually have 10 permanent members. So those 10 permanent members should become the permanent members of the one institution which is created out of these two. This was my suggestion. And later on, I was told after my talk by two senior Chinese analysts that yes, amongst the Chinese, there was indeed a thinking of merging these two institutions. So, the point I want to make is that all this can be done in India. Why India? Because the BRICS presidency for 2026 is in India. And India has had a major setback in its foreign policy. It is no secret that President Trump, he has openly ridiculed, lambasted India's foreign policy, India's leadership, and which is why now External Affairs Minister Jay Shankar is repeatedly saying that India will assert its strategic autonomy. We have strategic autonomy. As I said, that his thinking of strategic autonomy is different from the strategic autonomy of the new global governance system, where every nation should have strategic autonomy if they believe in geoeconomics. But so be it. Here he is talking of strategic autonomy, and this is why, first of all, we saw that Prime Minister Modi, despite India and China not having normal relations, he traveled to attend the SCO summit on September 1st in China. And the visual was splashed about on the pictures, the Modi, Xi and Putin together, that there's a rapprochement going on and this is because of what President Trump is talking ill about India. Well, that was not so. As I said in my earlier videos also, that what Modi had done was, his visit was a tactical reset, basically to get Chinese support, which is critical for the success of India's own presidency, which is in 2026 in BRICS Summit in 2026. It is, well known fact that without full support of Russia and China, the India's BRICS presidency cannot be successful. But what we have recently seen also is that on the sidelines of the United Nations, Jay Shankar, he held a meeting with certain BRICS nations and he held another meeting with certain global South nations. So there is an attempt being made to showcase, I'm using the word deliberately, showcase, that India actually is with the BRICS as much as it is with the Americans. But of course the truth is different, because India has already signed up to Mission 500 with America. And this is in the 13th February this year statement, which was signed between when Prime Minister Modi visited the White House. Now, I am not here to talk India-America relations. The point is that India is very much with the Americans. There should be no doubts on that score, but it also wants to show the world that it has strategic autonomy and it can do a successful BRICS. So I think this is the opportunity now. If BRICS is to be successful, and success in one way means that there should be a meaningful joint statement at the end of the BRICS summit in India, then both the countries, China and Russia, Russia should be talking more with the Indians on this issue that I just want to propose. And in any case, we know that President Putin is coming in December to India. That could perhaps be the right opportunity. So the three things that I propose should be announced, like big announcements were made in SCO. There should be big announcement in the BRICS as well in India. And they should be merger of BRICS and SCO. The permanent members of one to be the permanent members in the next institution, whatever it is called. And the third and the more important is that as of now what happens is that India always insists, for example in SCO, that only common things need to be discussed. I think it should be put down that even the hotspots or the problems of the countries which are there as members of the new institution, they also need to be discussed in whatever format the countries need to do. Because as I said, peace is fundamental to trade and development and connectivity. Now this will not be easy, I know that, because India has invested a lot in America. But the point to make is some government in India has to take a bold step. So the suggestion is that why not look at Russia, a trusted country, for the strategic requirements of India? And why not look at China for the non strategic requirements? So there is a case here after how Trump has treated India, that India must make success of its BRICS presidency, and there is a case to have a voluntary security architecture of India, China, and Pakistan. Thank you so much.